of life, and when Christianity devised other weapons of conquest like evangelization, they made pluralism a virtue in their nation states. Hindu Dharma has always believed or has always subscribed to diversity. We don't need this Christian colonial concept of pluralism inside India. We have always been diverse. Pluralism, please understand, is multiculturalism, which is the new term for pluralism in Western democracies. This pluralism or multiculturalism is accommodating the indigestible elements of your society who refuse to become a part of the mainstream. Those elements which do not consider this territory to be their Matrubhumi, those elements which do not subscribe to Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism, those that insist that they will live as indigestible elements, but they seek accommodation within the broader diverse parameters of Hindu Dharma, these are the pluralist elements. And when white, Christian, colonial, Western democracies promote the concept of pluralism, this is for the non-white, non-Christian democracies like India, whereas they are rejecting multiculturalism in their own countries. The Australian Prime Minister is saying, subscribe to the Australian culture. The British Prime Minister is saying, subscribe to the British culture. Australian culture, American culture, British culture, please understand, is white Christian culture, whether Catholic or Protestant. And immigrants and migrants who seek citizenship or residency in their countries are demanded, it is demanded of them that they have proficiency in the English language and that they subscribe to the broad cultural values which are rooted in white Christianity. And this pluralism, they want India to accept as an integral part of Indian polity, and this subversion, it is this intellectual subversion which has launched Sonia Gandhi into the forefront of Indian polity. I personally consider the presence of Sonia Gandhi in Indian polity as much as an affront to my sensibilities as the mosque in Ayodhya, Kashi and Mathura. It is an affront to my sensibilities, to my Hindu sensibilities. This is success number 2. The third idea that they are propagating is the concept of South Asia. This concept of South Asia, which has no legitimacy, is a political construct with its origins in American think tanks, where they seek to subsume. Please understand one thing. If there is one thing that both Islam and Christianity are afraid of, it is Hindu nationalism. Hindu nationalism poses the biggest conceptual threat to both Islam and the evangelical church. The third idea that they're propagating is the concept of South Asia, where they hope that India's territorial borders and her Hindu identity will be subsumed in the larger Muslim-dominated region of Pakistan and Bangladesh. When they say South Asia, I don't think they have Bhutan and Sri Lanka in mind. When they say South Asia, they primarily mean India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. The most subversive act undertaken by Indian academia is the kind of history that they have written for us. It is a defeatist history. It is a history which says that the Indian nation was invaded upon hordes and hordes of people, and that they emasculated Indian society, that Hindu society was weakened because of them, putting us in a defeatist frame of mind. But is this true? This is not true. I have one of the most brilliant papers compiled by Dr. M.D. Srinivas of the Center for Policy Studies in Chennai. And look at what he's saying. It was the Hindu community. Islam had already overridden Europe, Africa, and large parts of Asia. But Hindu community kept off the Islamic invaders who could not get hold of foothold even in India between 600 and 1200 AD. Islam could not get a foothold here. And which were the Samrajas and Rajas which had held them off? The Chalukyas, the Rashtrakutas, the Karkotas of Kashmir, the Rajputs. They kept Islam away from getting even a foothold in India up till the 12th century. Once Islam got its foothold here, there were still large parts of India which were never under their control. Large parts of South India, Assam, Orissa, they were never under the Muslim rule for any great significant period of time. The Madurai Sultanate was thrown out within 30 years. You had the Marathas, you had the Vijayanagar kingdom, the Samrajas, you had the Bundelas, you had the Sikhs, you had the Jats, who raised powerful military organizations to combat Islam. And the Islam that came to India was Jihadi Islam. Jihadi Islam is not a phenomenon of the 20th or the 21st century. When Islam came to India, it came as Jihadi Islam. It was only jihad that the Hindu community has faced from 600 AD. We never allowed them to set up any kind of government till 1200. But even after we lost militarily to Islam, Islam was a world-conquering force, let's not forget. And when we lost militarily, see what we threw up. Sanatana Dharma in the form of acharyas, bhakti movement, shastras, the commentaries, the bhashyas, the abundance of Sanatana Dharma religious literature which came through after we lost militarily. Sanatana Dharma has been the core of Hindu Rajya. It was the core of Hindu Rajya in Southeast Asia for close to 1000 years between 300 AD and 1500 AD. The Rajas and Samrajas of Southeast Asia had Sanatana Dharma as their core. And Sanatana Dharma influenced West Asia, Central Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia. And we have an external affairs ministry today which has made sure that India is surrounded in every state adjoining her by ideologies and religions actively hostile and inimical to Sanatana Dharma and the Dharmi here. Nepal has fallen victim. Bhutan is well on its way to falling victim. Bangladesh, Pakistan, we have lost Sri Lanka also. India failed to step into Sri Lanka. Musharraf has stepped into Sri Lanka. India failed to step into Nepal. China, America and the Maoists have overrun Nepal. Hindu Rajya means territory under my control and territory under my influence. It is the subversion of intellectual India that we believe in the Gujarat doctrine, which says given, surrender, overrun, welcome and decapitate us. What is destroying India today is intellectual subversion in polity, which gives them the ideology upon which the UPA government and even the NDA government to a certain extent functioned. How else can you explain the fact that the NDA government handed over Rajghat to Nirmala Deshpande? It was our government which did that. How else can you explain the fact that it was the NDA which made M.K. Narayanan a member of the National Security Advisory Board? It is intellectual subversion. We are so afraid of people calling us intolerant. When are we going to say, yes, there is a us and there is a them. There are those who belong, there are those who do not belong. But you are welcome. You will be provided with all comforts, respect, the freedom to practice your religion. But you cannot be a part of the Hindu Rashtra. You cannot participate in power. do we have the courage? We had the courage, and that is why we remained a Hindu Rashtra and a Hindu Rajya. The day we opened all doors indiscriminately, and the day we used Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam as our defining characteristic without the strength but from weakness, we have allowed intellectual subversion to weaken us to such an extent that 50 years after independence, the power returned to Hindus. But what kind of Hindus? Hindus who were ashamed to be Hindus, regressive Hindus, deracinated Hindus, Hindus who had no faith in their own civilization. It is Hindus who speak badly of the caste system. It is Hindus who speak badly about our Hindu acharyas and gurus. It is Hindus like C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer who advocated government control of temples. Intellectual subversion. Media. The media has played no less a destructive role. Please understand, the money for media. How many times has the Sangha Parivar bemoaned the fact that we are unable to bring out a national newspaper which will give the leading English dailies a run for their money? Because we think we do not have the resources. Then think of the kind of money that is going into the Hindu, the Times of India, NDTV, CNN, IBN. Please understand, this is money that is coming from outside. When these channels function, they do not have national interest in mind. They do not care about national interest. They have to answer to the hands that is pumping money into their channels and papers. Is it any wonder that they are anti-Hindu? A very subtle intellectual subversive activity is taking place, and I'm afraid there is a large section of even intelligent Hindus who have bought into this argument that we need to partner the US and the developed Western nations to fight Islam, not realizing that jihadi Islam was first pacified and used by the Western nations in Afghanistan and in Kashmir. The West has pacified and used Islam to serve Western colonial interests in non-white, non-Christian nations. If we understand this clearly, we will not make the mistake of thinking that we have to partner Western nations in our war against jihad. Also understand that the Western nations are the most bitter critics of Hindu nationalism. You only have to read the annual reports which the US State Department churns out on religious freedom, human rights, and patterns of global terrorism. The language it uses against the RSS, the language it uses against Hindu nationalism. Why did the US refuse visa to Narendra Modi? It was to send a strong signal to NRIs and would-be NRIs in India that if you want accommodation in the US, you have to distance yourself from Hindutva and Hindu nationalism. No meaningful partnership or cooperation is possible with communism, Islam, or Christianity. We must allow them to wage their cosmic wars, and if they are warring with each other, sit back, enjoy the fun. Don't think you are going to participate with one of them. None of the three is going to accept Hindu nationalists, Hindu nationalism, Sanatana Dharma, or the Dharmi as their equal partners. If anything, they will try to use the gullible sections of the intellectual elite to serve their purpose. The last segment which practices intellectual subversion. I particularly hold a very significant section of the IIT pass-outs who have relocated in the United States for this intellectual subversion. When I did some research on anti-Hindu non-government organizations, I found that most of these non-government organizations like AID, ASHA, Akhila Raman, Angana Chatterjee and the others are all well entrenched in American universities. These are communists who are functioning from American universities, who openly write in support of Naxalism, who have participated in the CPI ML Congress. Mahashweta Devi, Arundhati Roy,